You are listening to the Chits and Giggles podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Chits and Giggles Chit Chat. And luckily, this week I'm actually joined in person by Russell, which is very exciting. Doesn't happen very often.
Well, you know, if we can expense these flights, you know, so I can come to Melbourne every time we want to do one of these podcasts, I'm all up for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea.
But yeah, I made it to Melbourne. It was a very long flight. I don't know if you've ever flown to the other side of the world before. Well, you have, you know.
Have.
But I mean,
As
the
a
general
listener.
you, the listener, it's quite an ordeal. You know what? And also, it's like 24 hours solid without any access to board games.
Yeah, well, did you download the apps?
No. No, I just literally tried to beat jet lag by just staying up, and it meant the most miserable second flight. Ugh, I wouldn't recommend it.
I play a lot of Agricola on flights because it takes a while and the app's pretty good.
Do you play it on your own?
Yeah, against the computer.
Oh, okay, fine.
I don't know. If a lot of people are like, oh, but the computer's never going to be hard enough to beat. I'm obviously not very good at Agricola because I find the computers can be quite hard on hard mode.
Yeah, but I'm thinking it's so easy to create an AI that can just go the optimal, basically Mike in an app. That's so. What I'd feel like. You can it's easier to make a computer
but
harder
at least
to play.
Without, as long as you don't cheat. Like if you play the hard mode on, what's it called? Stop it. No, what's it called? Can't stop. Oh yeah. If you play the app on that hard mode, I swear it just rolls
perfectly
the good dice.
Time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm going to push my luck. You're not pushing luck. You are the computer. You choose the dice.
Do you know what it was like? That reminds me of the whole app thing. There was a person who used to play Scrabble or Words with Friends, which is essentially the same thing with their friend, and they would basically how come they're doing so well? And they would be using a computer solver to use the letters and optimally find the best scoring word based on the map. But then they just started doing the same thing. So essentially you had these two people playing Scrabble, but it was just two actual computers playing each other.
Yeah.
Whose computer is better? You know, it was so weird. Anyway.
But because people do that with chess as well, don't they? They play against a really hard computer, and they do the moves that their opponent does.
Yes.
So if their opponent moves this, you move that against the computer. See what the computer responds. You respond to your friend.
Well, there's that famous thing about the guy who would basically challenged. It was
Darren Brown, wasn't it?
Yeah, he played 13 people basically at chess grandmasters at the same time, and the first move he made in all of the first 6 games, he just used against the last 6, and that 13th was just him playing against someone.
That's right. He said that he could play 13 and beat more than half of them, but the 13th he had to just beat using his own talent.
It was quite impressive. I mean, I'm glad that we did a tangent, but it's all still board game related.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's not actually what we wanted to talk about, was it?
No. What have you been playing?
Well, recently we have been playing the Colonists.
We actually played it together. I got that in just because you were coming. I wanted something new and amazing.
And you know what? I'm glad you did, because it's actually pretty damn fun. It's a classic, proper Euro style game.
Yeah.
The theme is there, it's very minimal, and it's just a full on you are trying to build this massive sort of. Well, it's not even is it an engine really?
Yeah, there's a bit of an engine there, but you don't have to build an engine. That's the thing. Yeah. So if you want to build an engine, and of course I did every game because that's what I do, so I can produce more of this element and then turn it into this element. But you don't have to, which is the kind of the cool thing.
Yeah, because essentially you did that on your turn, and the both times that I've played, I've not done that. I've tried to keep a very small, location. What is it called? The board. The farm or something, whatever, the little spot that you're building on, and I haven't had many buildings, and I know you've just ran farms everywhere.
On the player board, I build tons of buildings, get tons of farmers and workers to work in all the buildings, and I'm like, this is brilliant. And then I look at you and you've got 4 buildings. Yeah. But yet we have comparable scores. Yeah. That's what's cool about the game, is that there's all the strategies are valid.
And even so essentially you start with a map that's built of all these mini hexagons, and all these hexagons represent actions in the game, and you go basically on your turn, you move your little sort of piece around the board to adjacent spaces and do the actions on them, but you can always jump back to these market spaces. And essentially you're expanding the map as every turn. You're adding 3 tiles to it at the end of every second round.
And what's interesting is the start player does that.
Yeah.
And when you start playing the game, you're like, oh, whatever, start player doesn't really impact it. But as we learned when we played a longer game, and we still haven't finished the game because there's 4 eras. We played 2 and it took 4 hours or something. But we just left the same first person.
Yeah.
But the thing is, because the first person adds 3 tiles to the map, and this is the action map. So it's almost kind of like a worker placement, but it's a worker movement like in Istanbul.
Yeah.
So you're moving a worker to perform the action, and you get to do 3 on your turn. But because one player was controlling
where these places go.
Yeah, that the places that were easy to get to were ones that were conducive for his strategy, and then the places I wanted to go to were miles away. I had to traipse out there. And the thing is, when you land on action, you have to do it.
Yeah.
You can't be like, well, I'll just pass this one. You have to do it. So if you can't do it, it means you can't go there. Or you're like, I don't really want to do this, but I want to get over there and I have to walk through it.
And you have to kind of plan. You have to plan. So like, if you do have to traipse out there as you did, you have to go, right, I have to make sure that going along there, I'm doing good stuff for me. And sometimes that means setting something up. Like there was the tile where you had to convert wood and clay into bricks. And you're like, well, I have to go on that. So I may as well make sure I've got like a few bricks and a few clay so I can actually make the most of that. So it becomes this like whole crazy, lots of things to think about, but it's all totally manageable. And I think that's what I really liked about it.
And like your strategy keeps changing. Like because the tiles that you add to the map, they come from a stack which is shuffled. So every game is going to be completely different, both where you place them in the order in which they come out. And this new building came out and I built it. And it essentially let you play 2 cards instead of 1 when you do the card playing action. And I didn't really play a lot of cards, but as soon as I had that, I just kept running around this area trying to play as many cards as I could. And it was brilliant because then I was getting all these cards and people were like, how is he doing that? I want that building.
Yeah.
That building's all the way over there. Oh crap. And then, and then you can get these colony upgrades, which give you like special abilities, which can mean that you don't have to pay a fee. So if you land on the same action as somebody else, you have to pay that person a fee, which sometimes means that you have no money left to do the action you want to do or have no resources left. But one of the colonies we had in play, and again there's 9 colonies, you choose 4, so every game again is even different. There was one which if you upgraded it enough you could avoid paying the fee, so once that happened you feel really free with
you know what, at the end of the day, but then it's funny because you get that sort of only on the second era, and by that time the map's pretty big. Like the chances of actually running into each other is very minimal. Like it's still possible, but the bigger the map grows, the less that becomes a problem. But we haven't actually explored.
It's true, we haven't played enough into because
I said to you when we were playing, I said it kind of feels a bit like a Fable game because we don't know what's coming, and we just kind of let the cards and the tiles play out as they were.
Way. You could look through the appendix and go and see all the buildings that are coming up, but I like just to say, ooh, what's this?
So we literally created a Fable game out of it.
Yeah,
we're like, cool. we know that we have to play those cards. We have no idea what's on them.
There's resources that we have in the box we haven't even seen in the game yet, and we've done 2 out of 4 areas. There's workers we haven't. I got 1 yellow worker. Yeah. And there's ones even above that we haven't even seen. So it's quite exciting, but it does have that kind of Fable legacy feel where you want to play the next game because you want to.
That's what I felt like. I was like, man, I can't wait to see what's coming up. But because of the variety of the improvement cards as well, there's so many in those decks that like you probably won't even read them all until you played like at least a few games of it, and so that's quite exciting. It's a really nice, hugely replayable game. It just, the only sort of, I guess, negative for some people might be that there's not a huge amount of player interaction.
Yes, for me that's a positive. But I like player interaction, but I like subtle player interaction. I don't like it when there's aspects of engine building. I don't like when someone can just come and just piss on your engine and stop it from running. That's a bit annoying. But because what's interesting is I was going to ask you, which do you prefer? And I know you've only played Colonists like twice. Yeah. Colonists or Scythe?
Oh man. I mean, I like both of them.
Because I mention it because Scythe won the Board Game Geek Game of the Year recently, and it was up against the Colonists.
That's interesting. Well, it's really hard to say because of the minimal time I've played Colonists. Yeah. But I did feel like I could probably play the Colonists more long term. I feel like I would play that more often than Scythe. Yeah. But they're both up there.
Yeah, of course. Like the games last year are actually pretty good. There were some decent games that came out. Because what's interesting, because I imagine overall because of that player interaction thing, people would prefer Scythe.
Yeah.
But I actually feel that the player interaction in Scythe is never really what it's cracked up to be.
I think it's because it builds itself from a selling it point of view as like moving mechs around in kind of a fighty, battle-y kind of game, even though it's not the main part of it. But when you actually play it, you're like, actually, it's not really. I mean, I'll do a fight once just to gain a star from it, but after that, I'm like, don't really want to do it.
That's right.
You can gain 2 stars from fighting, but ultimately that's not why. Unless
the black player can just go out and just destroy tons of people.
Yeah, but ultimately that's not why. It's not why you. That's not what the game is about. It's a very like kind of serene game actually. Most of it's like non-violent.
I think though in Scythe it's something I haven't seen as much of. Because the resources are kept in the areas. Mm-hmm. I think if people went into an area and then spent all the resources that someone had been saving, that is actually that's probably the more effective way of using the combat.
Yeah, that's why it makes it more worthwhile then, because essentially you just steal.
But it's surprisingly how little that happens.
Yeah, I think it's because you are. Yeah, it just builds. I think it's just built itself wrongly. I think for what it is, and I didn't really know a lot about it before I went in, but that actually helped me like it more.
It's almost like a trailer for an action film, and then when you go and watch the film, it's actually a rom-com, and you're like, what's happening right now?
That's quite apt, I have to say. But Colonists has a lot of mileage in it, I feel.
I feel like, considering if you were to play the whole game, it's so long, and every game is completely different, and there's so many components that keep changing that you're not going to play the same game.
Yeah, it's a long game, but I do like the fact that you can just sort of go, right, we're going to finish it after the first era, and that means that it's a different game, because you remember saying
I think
you can build up as an engine, but there's not as much use for doing that if you're ending at era 1, because that's not what scores you points. That pays off later, and that's actually more like a true engine builder. Like, it doesn't pay off until much later in the game.
That's right. So if you're going to play a 1 era game, you need to think, well, I need to maximize points now, or you can set yourself up so in the second era, then you have a better jumping off point, because you've got all these different buildings producing resources and this, and other people are just kind of like, oh no.
And so obviously Colonists is a hit, but I also played in a game that kind of reminds me a little bit of Oh My Goods.
I haven't played Oh My Goods yet.
Okay, so Oh My Goods is also like a chain building game. Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is I didn't realize who designed it until after I played it, and I was like, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. Maybe I do like Alexander Pfister games generally, because obviously Great Western Trail
and Isle of Skye.
Yeah, that I haven't played. Actually.
You haven't played Isle of Skye?
No, not yet.
Well, that's going to have to happen while you're here, because that is a phenomenal game. And speaking of games that are different every time, that game, every time is completely different. You score different every time you play. The tiles that come out are different every time you play. That game is amazing.
We will play it. I can see it right there. We will end up playing it. Anyway, so Oh My Goods, really simple, like kind of, what's the word, engine builder. You're essentially like, what he does all the time is just, what is those kind of games where the cards serve not only what's on the cards on the front of the cards, but you use the back of the cards as to indicate resource, a bit like Port Royal.
Or San Juan, where the cards, you can spend cards as a resource, or you can then, you build a card and then you throw away 3 cards in order to play that.
And like, who did Port Royal actually?
Fist.
Yeah.
Was it?
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Hang on, I can look this up.
It's in my bag over there.
Drum roll, please.
What is it?
Alexander Pfister.
Alexander Pfister, yeah, there we go. So he does like doing that, like with his games.
Have you played the travel version of that?
The travel version of
Port Royal?
No. It is a travel version.
I know, there's a travel version of it.
What is it? They've halved the size of the cards.
I haven't played it. It's what, those secret presents?
Yeah.
It's one of the secret presents.
Oh my god.
To explain, I have emergency presents.
Yeah, I find this hilarious, by the way.
Because I'm a board gamer, if someone were to give you a present, like at Christmas or something, and you haven't got them anything, then I have pre-wrapped little games.
What are they, like old games that you don't like?
No. These are games, actually, because it's really annoying, because I'm tempted to open, like this one especially.
Who's going to give you a present, like, now? When's your
the fact that they're still wrapped means obviously no one's giving me presents. Oh. And I had this fantasy that one day someone would give me a present out of the blue, and then I'd have something in return.
Well, maybe, anyway, moving on because it's quite tragic. Alexander Pfister, Oma Goods. It's a nice little sort of engine builder. You basically have one worker, and the cards are buildings, and you basically buy buildings using coins, and the coins are gotten from the goods that are created when you set a worker on a building, and he has the right goods to make whatever it is. So you store goods in that building, and then you use those goods to change into money, which you then buy more buildings. It's kind of, I didn't do a very good job of explaining that just then, but it's a really sort of neat little engine building game. The only thing is it suffers from that classic thing of engine building that just when you think, man, now it's really going, the game ends. And but I did manage to beat Mike at it, which was very satisfying on my first turn. Through a very fortunate chain that I had going, appropriate you might say, which turned wheat into flour and then into bread. So essentially I was a baker, which is what my other job is. So that was quite funny. So it's a nice little game. So I played that, and also I played Tragedy Looper for the first time today. Very interesting kind of game. It's the one thing I would say about Tragedy Looper, which is unfortunate, is it's so full on with the anime kind of genre.
So it's dripping.
It's it's melting with, it's drowning in its anime kind of, I can't even, Japanese.
Is it good artwork though? Is it?
No, it is literally those kind of thriller anime. I can't even explain it. It's just, it could have done the artwork, I think, a lot differently if it wanted to appeal to more people. Ultimately, if you like anime, or if you just don't really mind, then you'll still enjoy the game. But I think it's going to be off-putting when you look at the art. You're like, oh, this is so naff. But actually, there's a good system behind it. A good system that surprisingly has replayability, but it's so hard to explain to somebody how it works. It's essentially it's a one versus many game. So one person's playing the mastermind, who has all of sort of the information about which characters in the game, represented by cards, are certain roles. So someone might be the killer, another person might be a lover, and then another person is the loved one, and then other person might be the brains behind the operation. So only the mastermind knows this. The other players play the protagonists.
What does the lover do?
Oh, this is the thing. They're part of a plot. So one of the subplots might be romance.
Is the lover the Julia Roberts from Ocean 11?
I can't remember that. It was ages since I've seen that film. I have no idea. Maybe that's an apt description. I don't know. But ultimately, there is a main plot which involves the bigger characters. So, for example, the key character, that is actually the name. The key person is actually the name of one of the characters, the roles in the game. The key persons all revolves around this person, and then you've got maybe the killer, for example, or I can't think of any other examples, but and then you have other subplots such as a love romance subplot, which is a lover and a loved one, and those are the two roles in that subplot. So two of those characters are going to be those roles, and then it's up to you to work out which of the many subplots it could be by using characters' abilities to work out roles, and when certain characters die, they have to reveal their role. And so ultimately, you're trying to figure out all of the key characters in this game. So your job is simply to find out who, if anyone, is the key person, who, if anyone, is the serial killer, who, if anyone, is the friend, and stuff like that.
So mechanically, how's it done? So
there's boards on the table, there's 4 locations. The characters start in those locations, and then the way the game works is that each player has a deck of cards, including the protagonists, which are the sort of guardian angels who look after, are trying to help all the characters survive and not be killed and not suffer any of these tragedies, which are the loved one and the lover, for example. If one of them dies, the other gets loads of paranoia or something, and then they eventually die, essentially. And if certain situations occur in the game, such as if this character's in a certain location with a certain amount of paranoia or other
exactly
intense. It's intense, but the weird thing is that it's actually really easy to play, because ultimately what you are doing on your turn is you are playing one of 8 cards you have onto one of the characters. That is all you do as one of the 3 protagonists on your turn. You choose a card from your deck and you play it on a character. But some cards like clash with each other. So the mastermind can play a card that moves a character over somewhere, which is fine. But if you don't want that character to move over because you know something bad's going to happen, because the last time you did the game, because the game takes place over like 4 days, and each day is like 4 loops.
So you're looping through the same day?
Yeah, same several days. So like the game might be 6 days long, and you do an action and then you resolve it, and then you do an action for day 2 and then you resolve it, and so on.
Groundhog Days.
But if any of the game ending actions happen, you reset the whole thing, and you've only got a certain amount of those to figure out what's happening. But ultimately the cards, for example, if I moved a character over, last time that character moved over there with that other character, they died and the game ended. So you don't want that to happen. So you might play a cancel movement card on that character, but you don't know what card they've played until you both reveal it at the same time. So it's like you have to try and like predict what the...
So a player moved them the first time when they died?
Sorry?
Let's say they moved and then they died.
Yeah.
Did a player move them?
Well, ultimately the mastermind, the person who knows all the bad stuff and wants it to happen, moved it over because they know the information. If I move that character over there, then the serial killer is one of those characters, and they're immediately going to kill that other character, which is the key person. And if the key person never dies, the game's over. Well, we learned that because that's actually what happened during one of the loops. So the next time we played, we're like, well, make sure those 2 guys aren't together.
It sounds kind of like time stories, but less frustrating because you don't have to play for an hour before it loops around.
Yeah, we did actually finish the game in a decent amount of time, because ultimately it's a really easy game to grasp once you've worked it out.
So one problem, because like with one versus many games, one problem I often see is that they feel slightly like unbalanced. Like for instance, I played Not Alone recently. Have you played that one?
What, Not Alone?
Yeah. And it's actually a really good game, but as the people on the planet, not the alien, we had a blinding start, one of the best starts you could get.
Yeah.
And we still lost the game.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I played it, we didn't have the best start as the people on the planet, and yet we did win. I felt just immediately from the way that it's set up, it felt like it was a balanced game.
I felt like the cards that the alien player, especially considering at the end they get to play 2 or whatever it is, they get to do 2 things. Some of them are just stupidly good.
But if you read the player correctly, and you build yourself up earlier on to gain more options, for example, then I felt like it was a very clever game. You may have just had a really unfortunately one-sided game. We may have had the opposite.
But it was just the fact that throughout the entire game we were playing amazingly well. We were like dominating, and yet we still lost.
Then you didn't play amazingly well.
But like he never like found us. But he kept doing other things using his cards in order to lose our...
See, I didn't experience that. I haven't seen all the cards that the alien can play, but we felt like earlier on the player who was the alien was like really reading us quite well. But then we learned what he was doing to sort of predict or whatever, the way that he was thinking. We kind of countered that. We were like, let's think a bit differently. How are we going to approach this? And then, he's obviously going to think that, but then he thinks maybe do that, the secondary thing, but then we actually just do the main thing, and actually that's more beneficial. So it's kind of, it might be unfortunate, it might be unbalanced. From my experience of that time that I played
it's true. I thought
that
it was just a single game, and it could be different each time you play. But it just... Yeah, I'm just wary of it. But with Tragedy Looper, do you feel it was balanced?
When you are playing as the protagonists, you don't have to play 1 versus 3. You can just be 1 versus 1, and the one player controls all of three characters. But if you are playing as 3 or 2 people, you're not allowed to talk to each other during the actual game. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to wait until the end of a loop, which could be 6 turns away, to actually be able to discuss your plan. So it's meant to be quite quick, and you do have to read each other a lot. And in fact, when we played it, one of the obvious actions that we were trying to do to stop the character moving into the thing which ended the game, one character played a card, and we thought, he's moving that person away so that that character is safe and we won't die. that's me and the third person. Mike is the culprit, basically. Mike played a card on a character. We thought, oh, he's doing the obvious thing of moving that character away so that they're safe, and it gives us at least another turn to work out what's going on. Of course, we couldn't discuss this at the time because it's not part of the rules. But then the third player, like, oh, he's moved him out the way, so we're actually okay. And then what happened is he played a different card on someone else as a result because he thought, oh, he's safe. Reveals, nope, Mike didn't play the card that moved her out of safety. She's dead. We lost the game. So it's kind of like you have to rely on the other players being able to read you well, and I think that's where it doesn't feel. I don't know. I can't explain if that makes. I can't understand if that makes that more balanced or less balanced. I didn't feel like it was obviously one-sided. I didn't feel like one player had a massive advantage. Although I think like the protagonists generally have a hard time of it, no matter how many of you there are. Just because there's a lot of information to glean and you might get quite unlucky. But
so overall, did you like the game?
I wouldn't be in a rush to play it again, but I would play it again because I feel like knowing how the game works is always going to mean that the second game is always better. But I'm not sure I'm wanting it, and it's partly down to just how the game looks. I don't know. I know that shouldn't really put you off, but it just really does feel like I said, it's proper anime, like really deep anime stuff. Like it felt like, you know, the look of it. It's not mainstream appeal, and I think that's gonna probably put some people off, including me.
From your description, I'm not dying to play it, but I'll always play it any game once.
Yeah, you should. And I when I heard about the game, I liked the sound of it, but then I was like, I wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't be in a rush to play it again, but I certainly would. Yeah, that's about it, really. One thing I did. So, like, I mean, what games have you played recently?
I have been playing a lot of Three Dragon Ante.
Yes. We played that.
Yeah.
We played that together.
I've been playing surprisingly a lot because it's one of those addictive games that when you lose, you have to play again. Because it's like a fairly quick game. That when you lose, you're like, nah, again, let's do it again. So you often find yourself suddenly playing like 4 in a row, and that you went to someone's to play games for the night and you played the same game because you're determined to
try and claw it back.
I find it's normally you're determined to keep playing until someone else wins. There's normally one person who keeps winning, and then you just keep playing until anyone else wins. But it's quite a cool game. It's essentially there's money that you put in the pot.
Yeah.
Everyone has cards and they go between values 1 and 13, and there's tons of suits, like 7 or 8. But each suit doesn't have all the numbers in. It might go from 1 to 8.
Okay.
So there's only, I think, 2 13s in the whole game.
Okay.
So it's really difficult to know exactly. It's not that strict. Each of the suits on the cards has a different action. And essentially there's an ante is done, which varies each round. And then you're going to play 3 cards, and whoever has the highest total wins the ante. That's it. But each of the suits has an action associated with it, but you only get to activate that action if your card is equal to or lower than the card played by the previous person.
Yeah.
So if you want to activate the card, then you must play a lower card, but then you're trying to play a high card to win the ante.
Yeah.
So there's lots of cool things like that, but it's just really addictive because it's really simple, but the game keeps changing because there's so many actions where you can steal coins from people, and then you can actually try and get 3 of a kind or 3 of the same suit, which then lets you steal money from people and money from the middle and things like that. But it's just one of these really simple games, but that's really addictive.
It definitely felt like there was a game with like a decent amount of hidden strategy in it, for example, because of all the different suits and all the different abilities. And then there's also cards that affect the ante itself, and there's a lot of like dipping into the ante before the game the round is won, so you can affect, like, there's also adding to it, and there's also stealing money from your neighbor's sort of like supply.
It's a game that you could see that someone could be good at, but by the same token, someone who's really good at it could lose. And you can kind of gang up on someone if you want, and go like, oh, we can work together to make sure this person doesn't win the pot in this hand and stuff like that. Like, there's been games I've played where I'm like, there's some ways you could do it which I think would be cheating, where like they steal a card from your hand and you can be like, take this one. Or there's things where it's kind of like, oh, if you were to play this card right now, I there's one card where you have to give them money or a special suit of card.
Yeah.
And you could always be like, oh yeah, play that because I can give you a good something card, which you could use to stop this person from winning the ante or something like that. So
because I didn't feel like it was I didn't feel like there was a lot I could do to like affect somebody else's chance of winning. It was more like, what can I do to affect my chance of winning?
There's a few things you can do by working with other players, but you have to do table talk. Yeah. So it's up to you whether if you feel that's fair or not. Because you can be like, there's one card, the hatchling, which means that whoever has the lowest total wins instead of the highest. But you have to get it into the ante, and so you have to play the right actions in order to slip the card into the ante. But you can then. There's ways that you can get it out by working with other players. But yeah, it often involves table talk, and I can see some people, especially if you're the person who's winning, would get pretty annoyed with people table talk. But to me, it makes it more fun.
I think the thing is, the game that we played, I felt like it was literally wildly changing all the time. Like one person was doing really well, and then another person almost won it, and then another person almost bankrupt.
They won the game, and during the round that they won, they were bankrupt. And so they managed to win.
Crazy,
They were in negative numbers, and they managed to win enough to win the whole game in one round.
It was pretty.
I like that though.
I think it just means it's anyone's game, and it's not a game that it's like highly strategic. So it's not one of those games that like, if I would have won if I'd done that.
It's not like a game of Flux where you go like you have these keepers and you just draw. Oh, this goal. That's it. That's me.
Yeah.
And you're like, that was good. This is a game that, even though essentially it sometimes has just as much luck as that, you feel more in control, so it doesn't feel just as dumb luck.
I'm glad you found another sort of target for your ire than Splendor.
Well, that's good. Yeah, because Splendor's not purely luck driven. It's just, I don't know, bore driven.
Driven.
Yeah, you're bored.
Well, I could either just sit here doing nothing, or I could do something on my turn.
I'd rather do nothing than play Splendor, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't enjoy it as much as you guys, like when you played it. But
it's one of those games. The more you play, the better it gets.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure.
The first time I played it, I was like, pfft, and then I played it again, and I was like, this is a bit addictive. This game.
It was fun. It just wasn't like,
you got to play it more. Yeah. It's like innovation. The more you play it, the better it gets.
Ugh, talking about innovation, like the gunpowder and innovation. Oh,
if you don't like gunpowder in innovation, choose that card at the start of the game as the achievement card for that era.
Okay.
And then it's out of the game, and you don't have to worry about it.
Tip.
But when you play the game enough, the gunpowder isn't as powerful. Because you know it's coming.
Yeah. And you can
just try and score it if you see it. That's the good thing about innovation. Often you're like, oh no, if I'm letting that person draw a card, that's bad because they get to draw a card. But often, if they've got gunpowder on top and you let them play a card, well, if it's the same colour, they have to cover it, and now gunpowder's gone. So often you can kill them with kindness, which is quite cool.
Well, it's good that it has lots of levels. But yeah, going back to the whole being in Australia and like visiting a new place, I don't know about you, but anytime I go and visit a new country, a new city or wherever, I always try and check out the local board game scene. And part of that involves going to check out board game cafes and board game shops and stuff. And you know what, Melbourne is pretty well equipped.
Yeah,
you've got like at least 4 shops / cafes in a fairly small area.
Cafes, really?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's this one place. There's a cafe / karaoke bar, which I find absolutely brilliant combination. But I can see why maybe that's a bit weird to some people because it's not normal. But yeah, in terms of the shops though, you've got quite a few.
Shops are pretty good,
which is good for just people in general in Melbourne because of the competition and stuff.
Like I find the biggest shop in Melbourne is bigger and better than the biggest shop in London. Board games.
I'm just trying to think. Yeah, well, London doesn't really.
Leisure Games is for me the biggest one I've found in London.
But even so, that's not even central London.
That's right. You have to go way out.
And I'm wondering if there's shops
is
like
the one
that
in the centre of London.
Yeah, which is
tiny.
Yeah, it's unfortunately small. I think if given more space, they could do something interesting with that. But I'm wondering if there's like a Melbourne equivalent. If you tracked out a bit from Melbourne, if there's anything.
There is one. That's out in a warehouse somewhere. they've got quite a lot of stuff. It's in a warehouse. It's a real pain to get to. You really need a car, and it's about a 30-minute drive.
But anyway, yeah. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of things do you look for in a good, like, what qualities you look for, and what makes a good board game shop / cafe?
See, for me, when I walk into a shop, there's two things I want to see. I want to see a game that I want, and I want to see a couple of games that are new. So if the best thing is there's always a list in your head that you're like, if I were to see this, this, or this, I would just buy it instantly. And so, for instance, recently I went to Canberra, which has surprisingly good, like a really good board game shop and a board game cafe, like a proper one, not a karaoke one. And so I walked in the shop and I looked around, and it was like ticking all these boxes. I'm like, this is cool. I haven't seen this before. There was a game that I saw and that I wasn't aware of. It was, I think, I'm trying to remember what it is now. I can't remember. It was Las Vegas, the card version.
Oh.
I didn't even know there was a card version of that. And I really like Las Vegas. So when you see something like that, it's something you didn't even know existed, which for someone like me and you who actually work in the industry, to find a game that you didn't even know, or a card version of a game that you didn't know existed, you're like,
it's a big tick.
This is kind of cool. So I found that, and then it was reminded me to check something on my list, because recently when I was actually buying the Colonists, I was looking for the Castles of Burgundy card game.
Yeah.
Couldn't find it in stock online.
Yeah.
This shop had it.
Wow.
And so I ended up buying it. And the price was really good too. So that's like ticked all the boxes. So yeah, you find something, if you see a game that you didn't even know existed, for me that's awesome.
Yeah.
Or if you see a game that you know is difficult to find, or something that's like new. Like right now, if you walked into a shop that had Terraforming Mars, you would be like,
what did you do to get this?
Did you just buy a lot and you're slowly dripping these out? Like, how are you doing this? There's certain things like that. There's certain games you'd be like, if you saw it in a shop, you'd be like, well, even if you owned it, you would just think this shop, yep, tick, tick, tick.
Well, that's interesting, because there was a game in a shop in Melbourne that I actually saw, which I was surprised to see because of the known supply problem. Food Chain Magnate. Yes, that was in stock, and I was like, oh, so actually it's funny you said that, because I was like, actually, that kudos to this place for having that.
It does. There's a lag though. There's a 6 to 8 week lag between when it is released in the States and when you'll see it here.
Yeah, but I'm not 100% aware of the issues, but isn't it the case that Splotter, the company that made Food Chain Magnate, have decided, or they're not going to make another print run of it for ages, so whatever was released into the wild
then that's it.
Many months ago is
but I think that's because there's that lag.
Yeah, but still, like,
we
still quite
now have that, so we haven't sold it yet because everybody else has sold out. But Australia, we've only just got it.
But this is the thing, like, the fact is, everyone not talks on the internet, and there is a known issue with regards to Food Chain Magnate. Yeah. You'd think someone's seeing that and then snap it right up, but nope, still there. So I don't know if it's just the lag of also people in Australia not cottoning on to the fact that it's quite a rare game to get hold of.
You're going to get it while you're here. It's quite expensive.
No, I'm not, because I think it cost about £100 at least in British money, probably more like 120 or something. And there's no way I'm paying that for a game I've not even played yet.
For a game that has zero artwork.
To be honest, I think, as much as it's meant to be a good game, I'm like not going to take the risk and just go for it. Especially in a game that, like you said, although it does do really cool design things, it does, like the 50s theme is pretty good, and also the list of all the character and what they do is like a menu. I've seen it being played, but I haven't played it myself. But it's really cool. It's like a menu, like a food menu. So you open it up and it lists all the characters that you do. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, other things like cafes are trickier, because there's not that many places I've been like, I love this cafe. Because it's very hard to appeal to tastes, for example. A shop is fine, because you go into a shop and it's merely meant to be functional. It doesn't have to look cool. It just has to, sell the games that you want. And you wouldn't care if you go into a shop and it's a bit rickety or everything. As long as they sold you what you wanted for a decent price, it's fine. But obviously cafes, you're going to sit there, you're going to take in the atmosphere. it's a lot about the acoustics of the place as well. Is it going to be really noisy? Is it going to be too quiet? There's a lot of different things that go into like a cafe to consider, you know, whether you're going to enjoy a cafe over a shop. And so I felt like none of the cafe elements in Melbourne so far have hit that sweet spot for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because the thing that I noticed here is in the UK, you have a lot of board game cafes, places where you go and you spend money to play. But Melbourne doesn't really have that. There's a few places that kind of do it. But there's a thing that I noticed here that I've never seen in the UK, which is a shop that allows you to play games and has a library, but is like a donation library where you can donate like $1 or something, and then they use that money to put into buying new games for the library.
No, that's interesting.
But the problem with those for me is that the libraries are tiny.
Yeah, it's not quite big enough yet, but it's quite ambitious then if that's what the plan is. Like, eventually we'll get more games and hopefully that will bring more people in and more donations and more games. It's kind of like a self-sustaining thing. That's quite cool.
But another thing I look for, especially in cafes, but also in shops, is knowledge from the staff. And that's one thing, because like my favourite board game cafe I've been to is Thirsty Meeples in Oxford. And the only mark I can think of against it is the knowledge. So the last time I went in there was a game, the semi-new game, and I was very excited. They had a new game. Brilliant, tick. It was a game that I really wanted to play. Brilliant, tick. Went and asked a staff member, can you teach me this game? Sorry, no one here knows that game. So I was like, I don't mind learning games and reading the rules. I do it so often, it's fine. Yeah. But that's part of the cafe experience. If you can get someone to teach you so you don't have to just get into it quickly, it's that impatient thing. You're just like, I just want to play.
Frustratingly, I can totally see that being a negative, but it's one of those things that's really hard to, like, no business could literally pay someone to learn games.
It was probably maybe 2 to 4 weeks old, this game. Okay. And I totally understand, as an ex-game teacher myself, you don't have time to learn all the new games. You would never get
paid to it, and also so many games get released, especially in a place like Thirsty Meeples, who pretty much gets every new game. That it's
and they put them in the library, which is cool. But so I fully understand that it's hard. So that's why it's still my favourite. That's not a massive mark against it. But imagine how good it would be if they had all the knowledge.
Well, I think I mean, it's not to say that, you know, there aren't staff members there who keep on top of the games and stuff. Maybe just like
had a bad day,
the right one. But I remember, there was somebody teaching me a game, which I felt like they kind of were winging it a bit. That's not to say anything bad, because I've been in that situation. I kind of know a game, I don't know all the rules, but actually it's better for me to impart what knowledge I have to get you halfway there than for you to get the rest of the way, as opposed to just going like, I don't know it well enough, so you're better off just trying it yourself, and then having that whole slog of having to learn a new game. So I can understand that. But yeah, it's like generally though, board games are well covered here. And actually I went to a really cool little pop-up cafe, board game cafe as well, which is something,
it's fairly new, that place.
Yeah, this premise of a pop-up board game cafe is great, and so basically they had they had a few less games than your standard board game cafe, but it was very passionate, and because it was in a location that was just like a trendy cafe, for me that was like the kind of space I would like happily sit down and play games, because it's built to appeal to people, and it's meant to be like a calming, cool environment, which most board games at cafes I've been to aren't that, and that's pretty cool. I liked it, and there was they had the passionate staff there. They were really, really enthusiastic. Like, oh my god, I can't believe you guys came, around to play board games. Like, how can I help? And they had all these like good sort of snacks and stuff available. So that was pretty cool. Actually, I'll give them a shout out. It was called the Queen of Spades board game pop up in Melbourne. So if you're around, like, check it out. I think it's worth supporting people like that.
Did you have to pay to play?
So if you go the first time, basically they don't charge you for the gaming session, but it's like $5 to play the games. So this is pretty fair,
standard per person.
Yeah. So I mean that's it's good to come to a new country, a new city, and find that actually are the board games. Because I know when you first moved back to Australia, we had this talk even on the podcast, I think, about like how board games are over here, and there are sort of like problems with regards to like supply, and like when they release games, it's always like Australia feels like it's always a bit behind in the queue, but obviously there are still like,
and they're more expensive.
that's right. But there is obviously still a massive passion for games here, and it's
especially considering so many people spend their time outdoors.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really cool. I think it's a good vibe over here, and I'm pretty sure, like, like hopefully those problems will be overcome in the next few years and stuff. Especially board games growing as big as they are. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Glad you liked it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll get some more podcasts done while you're over here.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll even call Dave.
Bring Dave in. Like, come on, Dave, get your mic out.
Yeah. But until the next podcast, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Chits and Giggles podcast. For more reviews and podcasts, visit forchitsandgiggles.com.